welcome to everyone who is joining us for this virtual edition of CommWeek 2020. We are going to be joined today by speakers who have a background working in the nonprofit sector as an opportunity to explore the new degree that is being offered in the Department of Communication for those who wish to work in the philanthropy sector. My name is Mindia Whittier. I'm an instructor in the Department of Communication in the PR sequence. Today, we are joined by two guest speakers. The first is Christopher Enriquez. Christopher serves as the digital strategist at Workers Defense. Together with organizers in cities across Texas, he helps support and uplift local and statewide campaigns that empower hardworking Texans. Previously, Christopher worked in Washington, D.C. with Voto Latino, a pioneering civic media organization that promotes and advocates for the Latinx vote through innovative digital campaigns. We're also joined by Alex Cambora. Alex earned her degree in PR from UTA, and after graduation, she joined a well-known PR and marketing firm where she spearheaded campaigns for some of DFW's most recognizable brands. She currently leads the communications department for the Center for Transforming Lives, a nonprofit organization dedicated to disrupting the cycle of poverty and homelessness for women and children in Tarrant County. Alex also serves as a grant panelist for a nonprofit organization in our community. She also launched Good Thing Marketing, a boutique marketing and social media agency based in DFW. Colton Strasser will be our moderator today. He's a lecturer in philanthropy and coordinator of the BA in Philanthropy program in the Department of Communication at UTA. He holds numerous academic degrees and professional certifications in nonprofit management, philanthropy, and fundraising. His research primarily focuses on the grant-making and community engagement activities of foundations and how institutions of higher education engage with their local communities. And now I will turn it over to Colton to moderate our discussion.
All right, thank you, Mindia, and thank you, Chris and Alex, for joining us on this panel today. So what I want to talk about is sort of your entry into the nonprofit sector. Previously we've seen folks kind of fall into nonprofit work. Either they were passionate about something and found an opportunity, or different things along those lines. What we're seeing now is students really making a choice starting in undergraduate work. There's a number of programs that are focused on building nonprofit professionals, whether it be nonprofit management or philanthropy. And so students out of high school are choosing these things. And also younger folks in general seem to be getting a little more involved in policy. Students that were victims of the Parkland shootings are doing a lot of advocacy around gun rights. Greta Thunberg is really pushing forward some of the climate change initiatives. And so, I'm just sort of wondering, how did you wind up working in nonprofits? And, was this something you initially chose as your career, or did you kind of find it later? And Chris, we can start with you if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. I think I started with nonprofits about 10 years ago now. 10 years ago, the census was going on, and the results had, more like 2012, the results had just come out, and there were a lot of redistricting battles going on. Latinos were supposed to have a couple of new congressional districts here in North Texas, but other political heads disagreed with us, and sued an organization called LULAC and a few others that were fighting on behalf of Latinos at that time. So that was my first taste into nonprofits and politics, and that's how I've been bouncing around between those two for a long time now. And honestly, I just got into it because I feel Latinos are underrepresented, and there's a lot to change. I started with immigration as being kind of like an issue that was really important to me, but just seeing how everything is connected and how there's so much more other stuff that needs people to fight for. That's how I kind of just started working and trying to do my part.
Great. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have an internship opportunity at Fort Worth Opera. I was connected to by a very lovely professor of mine at UTA. And I started there. I knew that I wanted to do nonprofit. And I think that's one of the reasons that I ended up back in nonprofit after being in the agency world. Whenever I was at Fourth Opera, there were a lot of staffing changes at the time. And so even as an intern, I took on a little bit more than what what would have normally been anticipated by interns, which gave me a really wide scope of the work that they do. And being that they're a smaller nonprofit organization, I got to learn even more of kind of the inner workings and the cross-departmental collaboration and stuff. Whenever I moved into the agency world, I worked with nonprofit organizations, and I always found myself feeling just a little bit more passionate about the ones that I knew were driving change, especially whenever it came to advocacy. And so whenever I decided to leave the agency realm, I knew that I had to start looking for a job in a nonprofit organization. If there was a place for me in communications, I needed to fulfill that part of me. So now I'm at Center for Transforming Lives, where I feel like I'm contributing to our community, and I'm doing work as an advocate as well, and I love it.
So can you describe a little more about the work that your organization that you work for does, as well as sort of, what are your job responsibilities in your organization? I think a lot of times when people hear the word philanthropy, they think, oh, I'm going to be a fundraiser. I'm going to ask people for money all the time. And yeah, that's not always the case. My background's in philanthropy, and I didn't really ever serve as a fundraiser full time. And so that's sort of the myth we're trying to break a little bit. But what is the daily work before COVID look like for you?
Yeah, so Center for Transforming Lives is located. We have multiple locations all throughout Tarrant County, and we are we work side by side women, typically single mothers who have children, not only to work side by side with them to escape homelessness, but also to educate their children through educational programming, serve clinical services that are made available to them as well, and really help them disrupt the cycle of generational poverty for their families. A day in the life of being a communications manager for Center for Transforming Lives is a little all over the place. I will say I don't do fundraising directly, but whether I'm working directly with press to help facilitate media coverage if something exciting happening, or I am planning out a social media calendar and brainstorming digital advertising strategy. I'm a little all over the place because we are a small team. But I think that's kind of the beauty of it, that there's a mix, of a bunch of different communication services, and being able to hone in on one really strong cause makes it easy to kind of diversify the things that I do.
And Chris, how about your organization?
Right now I work with Workers Defense, and it's a membership-based organization. And we work to empower working Texans across the state so that they themselves can empower and fight for better working conditions. Something a lot of people don't know is that every 2.5 days a construction worker in Texas dies, and that's just because of terrible regulations and just the plain disregard for human life and for the people that are actually building our state. So Workers Defense does that work because all life is precious, and we need to really be able to celebrate them and make sure that they're not whenever they're done, well, when they leave for work, they can come back home and not fear that they're going to lose their lives. Just recently, there was a big accident in Austin where 2 cranes crashed, and we're worried. Some of our staff members went down to the site to see if, what they could do and see what happened, where the fault was. So it's really important work that I'm proud to be a part of. And what I do there is everything digital. So our comms department is currently a team of 2, our comms director and the digital strategist. And just before a couple of months ago, it was just a team of me. And that's when COVID was going on, and construction sites again were hotspots, and there was just a lot of bringing attention to the issues. And we did that. I mainly did that through social media, through creating content online, hosting a series of Facebook Lives with our teams and organizers on the ground. And yeah, no, and also at that time I was doing a lot of press, well, managing press and directing people to the appropriate people in our organization, because again, it was me and a consultant that was filling in some spots, but still very difficult to handle.
Yeah. So in the nonprofit sector, I think sometimes when people hear nonprofit, they think, oh, everyone that works there works for free. And so you are both paid staff members, correct? Okay. So there are jobs out there. But for the students watching this panel, what do you think are the current sort of employment prospects in the nonprofit sector? Do you see, are your organizations often hiring? Have you been seeing other organizations hiring as well? What does that career opportunity look like?
Right now, I can only really speak to my organization, or my type of work. I do see that there is a lot of opportunities, especially right now with the political climate. Organizations like ours are at the forefront of a lot of these fights, and funders see that, and they see the importance of our work and the need for it. So this year, especially from what I've seen, funding has been very good. People are putting money into our organization and into organizations like ours because, again, the need is there. So we've been able to do some important work and try to attract new talent to do that work.
So for me, I genuinely feel like the nonprofit world is like continuously growing and in need of strong and confident communicators. In the social justice realm of things, because things, like Christopher said, have become so political, I think that nonprofit organizations now more than ever are looking to communicators that are very well, that understand diversity, equity, and inclusion, the importance of communicating that, and then the importance of ensuring that it is actually acted out, within the organization, and so on and so forth. It's our job as communicators to do so, and so I think that there is a whole kind of growth in our industry that nonprofit organizations are starting to look for more people, a more diverse population of communicators, especially to ensure that there are multiple voices represented on their teams. So yeah, it's growing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's good to see that, nonprofit organizations are really focused on this racial inequality that's happening in the country. And, more organizations are adopting, their programs are taking equity lenses to them, their funding. Foundations are starting to think more about not necessarily over investing, but justly investing in different areas that they've maybe not invested in the past. Through this and also, this movement for, racial equality as well as COVID, have your organizations recently considered ways that they could do things differently or be more mindful of, the populations they're seeking to serve?
Yeah, so I work for an organization that is the majority of staff are BIPOC, and then the majority of our clients are also people of color. So we have, although you would think that, we initially had some sort of, large, I guess, what's the word? Overarching diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. We're we're almost 100-year-old nonprofit organization. And so with everything going on, there have been some really important conversations. Our communications team is small, but we have been extremely active in bringing in a diverse group of voices, and ensuring that every piece of communication that goes out into the world, whether that's into our clients' hands or whether it's into our donors' hands, are further exemplifying our values as an organization and our commitment to disrupting the cycle of poverty, which is very much related to racial inequality.
Yeah, and Chris, you mentioned a little bit about this in our discussion about, the inequities of who these sort of disasters and workplace hazards affect, as well as, you mentioned you worked for Voto Latino, and could you share a little bit about maybe not how those organizations are handling racial equity, but how you've seen maybe some other organizations recently have that conversation, or within your organization, you're seeing these inequities. How are you sort of bringing that up and other, to other audiences as well to point out, some of the errors that we've made in the past and how we can prevent those in the future?
Yeah. Right now, Workers' Defense took a stand, and not only that, but committed to be more proactive when it comes to racial justice. Even before everything that's happened recently, Workers' Defense had been a part of a lot of coalitions that worked on criminal justice, the arrest to deportation pipeline, and things of that nature. But the more recent news definitely led us to be more proactive in seeking Black-led organizations that are really at the forefront of these fights, and we're not only standing with them, but actually asking them how can we be better allies, and how can we bring in our community that usually doesn't join these fights, and educate them so that they know exactly what that pain is, and as best as we possibly could. But we just try to be better allies and be more active. Right now, we're in Dallas. We're working with a few other groups to try to divest funds. There was recently a vote. I think we were able to stand with those groups and demand that overtime pay for Dallas police is cut. We felt that there was a lot of the budget was spent there, and we didn't think that was appropriate. So really, not just taking symbolic stance, but actually working to create that change that's actually going to bring some sort of change and destroy white supremacy.
Yeah. So let's talk about sort of the pros and cons of working in the nonprofit sector. And all sectors have their pros and cons, so it's just not us. But maybe what's sort of your favorite thing about working in a nonprofit, or the nonprofit sector in general? And what's something that's kind of been challenging that maybe you either didn't know or weren't prepared for, or something that you've had to overcome in your career?
Well, one thing that I kind of enjoyed and was sometimes the smaller teams, you're just able to do more faster, but also oftentimes you get overwhelmed with stuff. And at my previous job at Bote Latino, one of my favorite things there was that the teams weren't so small. So we had a design department that took care of all the graphics, animations, and all of that. And but now here at Works Defense, I'm the one that's doing all of that, as well as all the other digital type of work. So it's there's definitely trade-offs, but I still enjoy doing both parts. Um, and yeah, I mean, also we're typically not bored. There's always different type of work, especially in my type of organization. I feel right now with elections coming up, we're busy with that type of content and that type of message. So there's always something really.
Yeah, so essentially some of the sort of the good and the bad, depending how you look at it, is that you can either work in a super small team or a super large organization, and so there's a little bit of variety, and students can graduating from this program definitely have opportunities to enter small shops or large institutions with the type of work that nonprofits do. What about you, Alex?
I take a lot of pride in being in the communications department for a nonprofit organization, specifically because whenever people think of philanthropy, they think of people that are on the ground, which are all extremely essential in progress and social justice and other nonprofit sectors. But being behind the scenes, I think even down to sending out, our organization's boilerplate with a high-res logo. Whenever I'm doing it and I'm sharing, our brand and everything that it represents with people, I just feel passionate because I know at the end of the day that my tiny, thing that I'm doing out in the world, my specialty is essentially turning into something that is actually having real change in the world. Whenever a case manager calls me and says, I moved another woman into an apartment today and her 2 kids have a home for the first time and we've got them enrolled in our educational program and they're going to be ready for kindergarten. I know that I wasn't the one who was there holding her hand as she, took steps on this brave journey, but I was behind the scenes doing my part. And so that's the pro. If there's a con, it's definitely just kind of having to get your hands dirty and not be afraid of doing the small tasks. There are simple things, there are big things, and it's an ever growing, thing, marketing and communications. So it can be a lot of work and kind of overwhelming, but at the end of the day, the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about our students, and they're pursuing this degree or plan in philanthropy at UTA. What are maybe some pieces of advice that you would give them while they're still in college, of maybe things you did or maybe that you didn't do, that you wish you did, to prepare for a career in nonprofit or philanthropy work?
Number one, get an internship. It's the most important thing you can do. And if possible, get more than one internship because every organization is different. Their inner workings are different. There are some organizations where the marketing department or the communications department work very closely with their development and fundraising team, and others that work completely individual from that. So figure out what you like, the size of the nonprofit you like, and know that there are so many different things out there. The second thing is try to find a mentor, somebody who's willing to at least talk you through, what's going on and help you understand your place and help you kind of discover where you feel like you fit best and where your passions rise. And then third, something that I see a lack of just in general in our industry is people who really know how to write, and not just grammar and spelling, but narrative driven writing. People that are able to tell the stories of nonprofit organizations. Even if your day-to-day job isn't writing copy for the nonprofit organization, the likelihood that your hand is going to be on a grant application or on a social media post, or even, in a letter from the CEO when you're ghostwriting, it's a huge asset. So take some creative writing classes.
And Chris, what about you? What advice do you have for some of our undergrads?
Yeah, to share a lot of your same thoughts. Definitely volunteer. That's how I started. I started volunteering in political campaigns, and from then that's where I kind of found my niche in in nonprofits. So there were a lot of candidates that I looked up to and that I thought were going to do good things. And from there, I found that the organizations that they were also a part of and that they looked to for guidance. And also just be able to bring a lot of skills to 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 wherever you land. Like I said before, I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of social media management, but I also do a lot of graphic design, a lot of even some video editing, and it just the more you can bring, the better. For example, when I came to Workers Defense, I was the first person that did digital for the organization. So everything that I did they were nice, and just being able to bring those skills from different areas of experience, but definitely from Voto Latino. I felt that was a lot of help to this organization at the state level, and also if you're able to go to other places, not just your like like a local organization. Going to DC was a really great experience for me. Didn't stay long. Their faculty were terrible, but I really learned a lot, and I don't think I would have been able to get the type of digital skills that I have now if I hadn't gone to a place like DC where there's so many resources and so many opportunities to not just get those skills, but also meet people and meet people in the field that I was interested in.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, in nonprofit work, we often wear multiple hats, but that's fun because you get to practice different skills every day, and every day is a new and exciting day that you're going to likely do something different than you did the day before. So I think it keeps people engaged in that type of work. Well, I just want to take a second to thank you both so much for your time. You gave some great advice and some great tips for students looking for careers in nonprofit work, and some great advice here at the end too about some of those in-demand skills for nonprofit work. So again, thank you so much for joining us today and joining us for CommWeek. We're proud to have you both as alums of our program doing great work in our communities, and keep it up.